Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and please hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to hear how this ends. When my son called to say his girlfriend was pregnant, I should have been thrilled. Instead, something in my gut twisted. Maybe it was the way he said it, rushed and defensive. Maybe it was the fact that they'd only been dating for 8 weeks. Or maybe it was the 40 years I spent as a fraud investigator for Pacific Northwest Insurance, where I learned that when something feels too convenient, it usually is. I'm Barbara Chen, and I raised my son Michael to be kind, trusting, and honest. All wonderful qualities in a person, terrible qualities in a mark. And sitting in my Seattle home office that Tuesday evening, listening to him tell me about Amber's surprise pregnancy and how excited he was to be a father, I knew in my bones that my boy was being played. Let me back up. Michael is 32, a software engineer at one of those tech companies everyone's heard of. Smart kid, makes good money. Just finalized his divorce 6 months ago from his college sweetheart. The divorce wasn't ugly, just sad. They'd grown apart. No kids, thank God. But it left Michael vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. Eager to prove he could do relationships right. Desperate to build the family he'd always wanted. Enter Amber Martinez, 28, gorgeous, and according to her Instagram, a lifestyle influencer and wellness coach, which, from what I could tell, meant she posted pictures of herself doing yoga on beaches and drinking green smoothies. No visible means of income. No office, no clients, no business license I could find in the public records. Yes, I looked. Old habits die hard. They met at a coffee shop. Amber had accidentally spilled her latte on Michael's laptop. She was so apologetic, so concerned, insisted on paying for any damage. They exchanged numbers. 3 dates later, she was staying over. 6 weeks later, she'd moved into his downtown condo, and at week 8, she was pregnant. The timeline alone made me suspicious. The pregnancy announcement coming right after Michael mentioned he was about to close on an investment property? That made me alert. But what really got my attention was when I offered to come with Amber to her first prenatal appointment, and she had an excuse ready before I'd even finished the sentence. Oh, that's so sweet, Barbara, but my doctor is super strict about only the father coming to appointments, COVID protocols, you know. This was 3 years post-pandemic, and those restrictions had long since lifted, but I smiled and nodded and said I understood. I understood. All right. I understood she was lying. Now, I want to be clear about something. I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be a paranoid old woman, seeing shadows where there was only light. I wanted Amber to be exactly what she appeared to be. A young woman in love, carrying my grandchild, building a life with my son. But wanting something doesn't make it true. And my job for 4 decades was to investigate insurance claims and sniff out fraud. I was good at my job, really good. And every single alarm bell that had served me so well in my career was ringing. So I did what I always did. I investigated. It started small. A social media deep dive while Michael was at work and Amber was at home doing whatever it was she did all day. I created a fake Instagram account, no photos, generic name, and started following her publicly visible posts. Pretty standard influencer stuff. Inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos, smoothie recipes, yoga poses, but then I went deeper. I used some old contacts, people who owed me favors from my insurance days, to access databases I probably shouldn't have had access to anymore. And that's when things got interesting. Amber Martinez had lived in San Francisco 2 years ago, under the name Amber Rodriguez. Before that, Portland. Before that, San Diego. Each city for about 18 months. Each time, she'd had a different last name. And in each city, I found the same pattern in court records and police reports. A man claiming she'd faked a pregnancy. 1 case was dropped, 2 were settled out of court. 1 was still pending. 4 men, 4 fake pregnancies, 4 cities. And now she was in Seattle with my son. My hands were shaking when I closed my laptop that night. Part of me wanted to drive straight to Michael's condo and drag him out of there. But I'd learned in my career that timing is everything. Go in too early with too little evidence, and the suspect runs. Or worse, the victim doesn't believe you and cuts you off completely. I needed more. I needed proof that even Michael, blinded by love and hope, couldn't deny. That's when I noticed something else. Amber's gay best friend Tyler. He showed up in so many of her photos, always in the background, always carefully positioned just outside the frame's focus. The perfect, non-threatening male companion. But when I ran his face through a reverse image search, I found photos of him with Amber in San Francisco and in Portland. Different hairstyles, different cities, but the same two people. And in one photo, taken on what looked like a hidden Facebook account, they were kissing. Tyler wasn't her gay best friend. He was her partner, her accomplice. I sat in my office at 11 o'clock at night, staring at my screen, and felt something I hadn't felt in the 3 years since I'd retired. Purpose. This was what I was good at. This was what I was trained for. And this time, it wasn't just another case. This was my son. The next morning, I called Michael and asked him to lunch. We met at our usual spot, a Thai place near his office. He looked tired but happy, showing me ultrasound photos that Amber had apparently gotten at her appointment the week before. Except I'd worked enough insurance fraud cases to know what a stock ultrasound photo looked like, and these were definitely stock photos. You could even see the watermark if you looked closely. I didn't point that out. Instead, I smiled and cooed over the grainy images and asked careful questions. When was the due date? How was Amber feeling? Had she picked an OB-GYN yet? Each question he answered with vague reassurances. She's handling all that. You know how she is about her privacy. I did know. That was the problem. Michael, I said carefully, I want to throw Amber a baby shower. His face lit up. Mom, that would be amazing. She'd love that. I'm thinking big. Really celebrate this new chapter. Maybe at the Fairmont? That's a lot, he said, but he was grinning. Are you sure? I'm sure. Let me handle everything. I want to do this for you both, for my grandchild. The lie tasted bitter, but I smiled through it. That night, I called an old colleague from my FBI days. Yes, FBI. Insurance fraud isn't just about fake medical claims. When you get into organized rings moving money across state lines, the feds get involved. I'd worked enough of those cases to make friends in the bureau. Alex Chen, I said when he picked up. It's Barbara. Barbara! Haven't heard from you in what, 2 years? How's retirement? Boring, I said. Until now. I need a favor. And I think I might have something you'd be interested in. I told him everything. The pattern of cities, the fake pregnancies, the settled cases, the accomplice. I sent him the documentation I'd compiled. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Barbara, Alex said finally, we've been looking for these two. They're wanted in 3 states. Wire fraud, identity theft, extortion. But they keep moving before we can build a case. If your son is their current target, then we can catch them, I finished. I'm planning a baby shower. 4 weeks from now. Can you be ready? We'll be ready. But Barbara, you have to tell your son. That was the hard part. I'd been avoiding it, knowing how he'd react. But Alex was right. I couldn't spring this on Michael in front of 50 guests and FBI agents. He deserved to know, deserved to make his own choice about whether to help. So 3 days before the shower, I asked Michael to come over. Alone. I'd prepared everything. Printed documents, screenshots, the whole timeline laid out on my dining room table like an evidence board. When he walked in and saw it all, his face went white. Mom, what is this? Sit down, sweetheart, I said gently. I need you to listen to me. It took 2 hours. I walked him through everything I'd found, every piece of evidence, every pattern. At first, he was defensive, angry, insisting I was wrong, but as the evidence mounted, I watched him crumble. The worst part was the ultrasound photos. When I showed him the watermarked stock images next to what Amber had given him, he just stared at them for a long time. She's not pregnant, he said finally. Not a question. A statement. No, baby. She's not. He put his head in his hands. I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a good man who wanted to believe the best in someone. That's not a character flaw, Michael. It's what makes you who you are. But that doesn't mean we're going to let her get away with this. That's when I told him about the FBI, about the other victims, about the plan for the shower. I expected him to refuse, to say he'd just break up with her and be done with it. But my son surprised me. "They need to be stopped," he said, his voice hard in a way I'd never heard before. "If we don't do this, they'll just move on to the next guy, the next victim. No, we're doing this. Thanks for watching. They will do not work like 7. The next 4 weeks were a masterclass in performance art. Michael had to keep living with Amber, keep pretending everything was normal, while knowing she was lying about carrying his child. I watched my boy play the excited father-to-be, buying baby books and looking at cribs, all while building a case that would put his girlfriend and her partner in federal prison. I threw myself into shower planning. I rented the ballroom at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. I ordered flowers, decorations, elaborate cake. I hired a catering company and a photographer. Every detail was perfect because it had to be. This wasn't just a party. It was an operation. The guest list was carefully curated. Michael's friends from college and work, some family members who knew the truth and could be trusted, and 3 special guests. Alex from the FBI, posing as my old colleague from the insurance company. Dr. Sarah Kim, an OB-GYN I'd known for years, coming as a friend of the family. And Marcus Reynolds, a private investigator I'd worked with on a dozen cases, attending as my nephew. The piece de resistance was the surprise I'd arranged. A complimentary ultrasound service at the shower. One of those BD imaging setups that boutique clinics offer, where you can see the baby's face in detail. I'd found a company that did mobile services for events. When I suggested it to Amber, framing it as a special treat for the guests to see the baby, she'd gone pale but couldn't find a way to refuse without seeming suspicious. The morning of the shower, I stood in my bathroom at 5 a.m., looking at myself in the mirror. I was 62 years old. I'd caught insurance fraudsters, helped put away organized crime members, and testified in federal court more times than I could count. But this was different. This was personal. This was my son. I drove to the hotel at noon. Amber and Michael were set to arrive at 2. Guests would filter in throughout the hour. The ultrasound tech would arrive at 2:30, and Alex had promised FBI backup would be stationed in unmarked cars outside, ready to move in once we had confirmation of the fraud on camera. The ballroom looked perfect, soft gold and white decorations, a banner reading "Welcome Baby Chen," tables loaded with gifts and games and more food than anyone could possibly eat. It looked like a celebration. It looked like joy. But I knew it was a trap, and I was the one who'd set it. Guests started arriving at 1:30. Michael's friends, excited and happy. My sister, who knew the truth and kept giving me worried looks. Dr. Kim arrived exactly on time, professional in a way that wouldn't raise suspicion. Alex showed up with his wife, blending in perfectly as just another old friend. And then at 2 o'clock, Michael walked in with Amber. She looked beautiful, I'll give her that. A flowing dress that did a convincing job of suggesting a baby bump. Though I knew from my research she was wearing a silicone pregnancy belly you could order online for $300. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She smiled and laughed and accepted congratulations from guests who had no idea they were part of a sting operation. Tyler arrived 5 minutes later, playing his role as the supportive best friend. He hugged Amber, complimented her dress, and got her a glass of sparkling cider, the perfect act. I watched them work the room and felt a cold sort of admiration. They were good. Really good. If I hadn't spent 40 years spotting liars, I might have believed them myself. At 2:30, the ultrasound company arrived. 2 technicians wheeling in professional equipment, setting up in a corner of the ballroom. I told everyone it was a surprise for Amber, a chance for all the guests to see the baby. The crowd was excited, gathering around. Amber's smile never wavered, but I saw her eyes dart to Tyler. He was across the room, trapped in conversation with Alex's wife, unable to get to her. Good. I'd made sure of that. "Amber," I called out, my voice warm and grandmotherly. "Come on, honey. Let's let everyone see this beautiful baby." She walked toward the ultrasound setup like she was walking to her own execution. Michael was beside her, his hand on her back, giving nothing away. He'd asked me if he could be the one to do it, to call her out in front of everyone, but I'd said no. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation. This was about justice, about stopping them before they hurt someone else. The ultrasound tech, a cheerful woman named Rachel, who'd been fully briefed by the FBI, smiled at Amber. "Okay, Mama, if you could just lie down here and lift your shirt a bit, we'll get some beautiful images for everyone." "Actually," Amber said, and her voice was just slightly too high, "I'm not feeling well. Maybe we should do this another time." "Oh no," I said, moving to stand beside the ultrasound table. "Everyone's here. It'll just take a few minutes. I'm sure you're fine." The room had gone quiet. Some of the guests were starting to sense something was off. Michael's friend David actually asked, "Is everything okay?" Amber looked around, trapped. The exits were clear, but Tyler was still across the room, and running would only make things worse. She had to commit to the performance or reveal herself, so she lay down on the ultrasound table. Rachel squeezed gel onto Amber's stomach, or rather, onto the dress covering her stomach. She pressed the ultrasound wand against it, and we all watched the screen. Static, fuzzy gray and white static. Rachel moved the wand, tried different angles. More static. "That's strange," Rachel said, playing her part perfectly. "I'm not getting a clear image. Ma'am, could you lift your dress a bit more? Sometimes the fabric interferes." "I don't think," Amber started. "Amber," Michael said quietly. Just her name. But something in his voice made her look at him. And she saw it then. He knew. He'd known for weeks. Her face crumbled. Not with sadness, but with calculation. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out how much we knew. Whether she could still talk her way out. That's when Tyler tried to leave. He'd picked up on what was happening and was heading for the door, but Alex was faster, stepping into his path with the kind of casual authority that only comes from years in federal law enforcement. "I don't think you're going anywhere just yet," Alex said quietly, and that's when Amber bolted. She jumped off the table and ran for the opposite exit, but Dr. Kim was there, and Marcus, the PI, and suddenly she realized the room was full of people who weren't just party guests. She spun back around, and her eyes landed on me. "You," she spat. "You did this." "I protected my son," I said simply. "That's what mothers do." "I love him," she said, but it was unconvincing even to her. We could have been happy. "You're not pregnant," Michael said. He'd stood up from the table, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "You were never pregnant. And your name isn't Amber Martinez. It's Amber Rodriguez. Or maybe Amber Morrison, or whatever you were calling yourself in San Francisco, or Portland, or San Diego." The room was dead silent now. All 50-some guests watching this drama unfold. "I have proof," Michael continued. "We have proof. 4 other men, 4 other fake pregnancies, 3 states, 2 outstanding warrants, and 1 federal fraud investigation. Did I miss anything, Mom?" "Wire fraud, identity theft, and extortion," I added. "But I think that covers the highlights." That's when Alex pulled out his badge. "Amber Rodriguez. Tyler Washington. I'm Special Agent Alex Chen with the FBI. You're both under arrest." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Real FBI agents, not just Alex, came in from outside. Amber and Tyler were read their rights, handcuffed, and escorted out. Several guests were crying, others were angry, some were just confused. I made sure everyone understood that this had been necessary, that we'd been working with law enforcement, that we had no choice. Dr. Kim examined the fake pregnancy belly that Amber had been wearing. "Silicone," she confirmed, "pretty sophisticated, probably cost a few $100s. The party obviously ended early. The caterers packed up the uneaten food. Someone took down the Welcome Baby Chen banner. Michael sat in a corner of the ballroom with his friends around him, looking shell-shocked but relieved. I sat next to him and took his hand. "Are you okay?" He thought about it for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "But I will be. Thank you, Mom. If you hadn't caught this." "That's what family does," I said. "We protect each other." "All those years I thought your job was boring," he said with a weak smile. "Insurance fraud investigation. Who knew it would come in handy like this?" "Boring jobs," I said, "are only boring until they're not." The aftermath took months to fully unfold. Amber and Tyler were indeed wanted in connection with multiple romance scams across the western United States. Their MO was always the same: find a recently divorced or vulnerable man, move fast, fake a pregnancy, extract money and resources, then disappear before anyone could verify the pregnancy. They'd made an estimated $500,000 over 5 years. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later. Michael had to testify, which wasn't easy for him. But by then, he'd started therapy and joined a support group for victims of romance scams. He was healing, slowly but surely. The strangest part came 3 months after the arrest. I got a call from a woman named Jennifer. She'd been one of Amber and Tyler's victims in Portland, had lost $50,000 and a year of her life to their scam. She'd seen the news coverage of the arrest and tracked me down through Alex at the FBI. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for catching them, for stopping them. I thought I was going crazy when it happened to me. Everyone believed them, not me. And to know that they're finally going to face consequences." She wasn't the only one who called. Over the next few weeks, I heard from 3 of their previous victims, each one thanking me, each one sharing their story, and each story made me more grateful that I'd trusted my instincts, that I'd investigated instead of just accepting what I was being told. 6 months after the shower, Michael started dating again. Slowly, carefully, with a healthy dose of skepticism that hurt my heart a little because it meant he'd lost some of his natural trusting nature. But he was smarter now, more cautious. He did background checks, verified stories, and took his time getting to know people. It wasn't romance, but it was survival, and I was proud of him for being strong enough to try again. As for me, the FBI asked if I wanted to do some consulting work. Apparently, there are a lot of romance scammers out there, and not enough investigators who know how to catch them. So my retirement got a little less retired. I started working with Alex on cases, helping identify patterns, teaching younger agents how to spot the red flags. 8 months after the shower, Amber Rodriguez and Tyler Washington were each sentenced to 8 and 6 years respectively in federal prison. They pled guilty to avoid a longer trial, which meant the victims didn't have to testify, which was its own kind of mercy. Michael went to the sentencing. I went with him. When the judge read out the sentence, I felt him take a deep breath beside me. It wasn't closure. Exactly, you don't get closure from something like this. But it was justice, and sometimes justice is enough. That night, Michael and I went to dinner at our Thai place, the same restaurant where I'd first told him about the baby shower plan, where this whole operation had really begun. "I've been thinking," he said over pad thai, "about what you did. About how you didn't give up even when I didn't want to listen at first. You listened eventually," I pointed out, "because you had evidence, because you did the work, because you cared enough to investigate instead of just dismissing your concerns." He put down his fork. "I want to write about it, about what happened, about the warning signs, the red flags, how these scams work. Maybe help other people avoid what I went through." "That's a beautiful idea," I said. "Will you help me?" "Of course." We spent the next 3 months writing a guide together. How to spot a romance scam. A survivor's story. We published it online, made it free to download. Within a month, it had been shared 50,000 times. Within 6 months, we'd gotten emails from 12 people saying it had helped them identify scams they were currently experiencing. 12 more families we'd helped protect. A year after the shower, Michael called me on a Sunday morning. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I met someone. Her name is Lisa. She's a nurse at Seattle Children's. And before you ask, yes, I verified her credentials. Yes, I checked her background. Yes, I'm taking it slow. And?" I asked. "And I think you'd really like her. She wants to meet you. Would you come to dinner this weekend?" I did. And I liked her immediately. Not just because she was kind and funny and clearly adored my son, but because she understood what he'd been through and didn't try to rush him past it. She was patient with his caution, understanding about his need to verify things, and mature enough to know that his past didn't define their future. They got married 18 months later, a small ceremony. Just family and close friends. No elaborate party, no surprises, just two people who knew what they wanted and were brave enough to try again. At the reception, Michael asked me to dance. As we swayed to some slow song I didn't recognize, he said, "You know what's funny? I used to think you were overprotective, always questioning everything, always investigating. And now?" I asked. "Now I think you saved my life. Maybe not literally, but you saved the life I was supposed to have. The one without lies and scams and fake pregnancies. You gave me a second chance at happiness." "You gave yourself that," I said. "I just made sure you'd survive to take it." "Still," he said, "thank you for being suspicious, for trusting your instincts, for not letting me make the biggest mistake of my life." As I watched him dance with his new wife later that evening, I thought about that day in my office when I'd first started investigating Amber. I thought about all the times I'd questioned whether I was doing the right thing, whether I was overstepping, whether I should just let Michael make his own mistakes. And I thought about something my own mother used to say: trust your gut. It's been keeping people alive for millennia. Don't ignore it now. So, to anyone watching this, anyone who's got a nagging feeling that something isn't right in their life or the life of someone they love, I want to tell you this. Trust your instincts. Investigate your concerns. Protect the people you care about, even when it's hard, even when they don't want you to, even when you might be wrong. Because sometimes your instincts are right. Sometimes that feeling in your gut is your brain processing 1,000 tiny details you didn't consciously notice. Sometimes being suspicious saves lives. And sometimes a mother's love is the strongest fraud detection system in the world. I'm Barbara Chen, and that's my story. Drop your location in the comments. And if this helped you or made you think about someone in your life, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it.